Welcome to ARC's webinar on the results of its energy management survey. My name is Anne and I will be moderating this session today. And we would like to present you the results of our recent research on a topic that has been of keen interest to all of you. It's energy management. And in the coming hour, my colleagues Florian Güldner and Thomas Manse will give you an insight of the results. At the end of the presentation, you can ask questions if you like to, and that would be really appreciated. And to do so, please write it in the question box in the control panel, which should be in the right upper hand corner of your screen. And after submitting your questions, they will be passed to me, and I can present them to my colleagues. So now, without any further delay, I would like to pass over the word to my colleague Florian. So, Florian?
Yes, thank you, Anne. Hello, good morning or good afternoon, whether you're joining from Asia. Yes, we'd like to present our findings of the energy management survey that we did earlier this year. We'll first start with an introduction about ARC, then talk about the survey, then we'll focus on the findings and finish with further research recommendations as well as Q&A. Before we start with anything, thank you very much. We expected not the amount of participants that actually filled out the survey. We had, I think, over 200, around 220 something participants, and that was really what made the survey a success. So thank you very much. So first, that introduction. I see some people I don't know, so maybe you don't know ARC as well. So first thing about ARC. ARC was established in 1986. Since then, we are focused on industry and infrastructure, and we have a global presence from US, Canada, to Germany, as well as in Asia or in Latin America. What we do is we do have an advisory service where companies subscribe to. It's an annual membership-based business model, so people who do subscribe get access to a lot of data and reports. We have market studies for sale, which are off-the-shelf products. We also have custom services as well as some forums. One of the forums, I will give some more details later on, will take place early March next year in Amsterdam. So we are around 100 people. We are a few people working on energy management. We have already published some reports, such as the Energy Global Market Research Study. We did some strategy reports, some insights and blogs. We also had a couple of workshops on this forum I mentioned earlier in Amsterdam. Myself, I'm Florian Güldner. I'm based in Munich, Germany. I'm with ARC for 7 years now. I worked for a few companies before, such as Siemens, Riva, E.ON Energy. I'm director of research and also responsible for the whole topic of energy management. Who's really helping us a lot is Anne-Kathrin Brech with marketing and sales and setting up these webinars, etc. And also Thomas. Thomas, please introduce yourself. Thomas?
ARC. My name is Thomas Menzel. Very warm good morning. I'm with ARC European Division based in Düsseldorf area. My focus and experience is basically process automation, and in this case I covered in this survey the subsegment energy management. Okay, I think we introduced now all to each other, and Florian, are you so kind and flip to the next slide, please? Fantastic. About this survey, the question was, what was the main motivation to deploy the service? And we feel, or we heard in many discussions with users and suppliers, the purpose of energy management is really to reduce consumption of utilities used by industries. And the objective of this is to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. That is not a new topic. I think the whole world is more or less discussing these things. But we in ARC, we felt what are really the requirements in our industry, what are the requirements in the process and discrete automation on the user side and on the supplier side. And so we found some answers here in our survey, which we proudly present to you today. Florian, next slide. Florian? Okay, thank you, Florian. So some facts regarding the survey itself. So the survey is brand new, up to date. So we started the questionnaire earlier this year. In total, we had 27 questions in this survey, split it for users and suppliers. We do not discuss all the 27 questions and answers here, so we selected some of those where we found there was really interested, and we would like to discuss with you today. So in the survey itself, we had all types of companies in where we discussed the question with. So we had very small system integrator companies with few employees up to really huge end users with more than 10,000 employees. They all participated in this survey. We worked hard to get a healthy split between the users, the energy management professionals, and the suppliers. So our motivation was to keep this group balanced. That means each group participated more or less 33% in this survey. And we had all dominant process industries in this survey. So we had vertical industries like chemical, refining, food and bev. And all these industries are, of course, the industry with high energy costs. So they are all have more or less initiatives to think about how to handle energy in future. And with this little introduction, back to Florian.
Thanks. So, main topic now, the findings. We're going to present you first around status quo of energy management. It is a very young topic compared to other issues in automation. Then look forward into outlook and growth, audits, monitoring, and finally we'll help you a little bit with strategies as well as target setting. So this is a model, a maturity curve that ARC has developed a few years ago. It shows the level of the market development, and it can also provide some guidance of how to basically implement energy management at a certain site or company. So I would like to introduce you just very quickly the concept. And at the beginning there's metering, so you can't control what you can't measure. That typically starts with the installation of just a few meters to figure out what's going on. In the end, the meters are basically systematically applied across the application you want to measure. We'll move to the visualization phase, where also at the beginning it's typically just a very single application which is visualized. And in the end you have more or less set up a concept of visualization that's systematically and harmonic across the plant. And you move on, companies move on through analysis and reporting, real-time monitoring, optimization, and in the end you have basically enterprise-wide optimization, which means there is a standard process on energy management which is applied across multiple sites, across multiple plants and applications. And if this is harmonized, this allows benchmarking. This allows really the next step in how to reducing energy consumption. So this is also a result from our survey, we asked people a lot of questions. We had a lot of questions to users. We did not really ask for the maturity curve because that's really a highly complex system. So what we did is we took some of the results and then basically translated it to fit our model. In total, around 20% of the companies from our survey are around investigating in energy management. That means they are still in the first phase of accessing it. Another fourth is in the metering phase, and another fourth in the visualization. So around 3/4 are not past any step that's more than visualization, and that shows you how young that is, because if you talk about other concepts of automation and production management, such as quality or so, it's a standard and it's an enterprise-wide system, but energy management, this is really the minority. And we have to say that, and this is the blue column here, this was an energy management survey that addressed energy management professionals, that, or at least people that were thinking about energy management. When you look into the whole world, I mean, all the companies that are out there, we actually think that around half of these companies never even thought of energy management. So that's why we introduced the blue curve to basically explorate the total market, to get from our results in the survey, which are biased to the total market. It gives you really, it shows you there are great opportunities in energy management, and there's still a long way to go to achieve the savings. About the decision making, we asked the users of the different industries, such as utilities, cement, gas, power, and also semiconductors, pharmaceutical, aerospace, and defense. Is energy management a topic for you when you make your decisions, when you make your investment decisions? It's quite easy. It's a heat map. So the darker, the more important it is. And you see that for the few top industries, it has strong impact or is the main driver for investment. While especially in markets such as electronics, semiconductor, pharmaceutical, or aerospace and defense, energy management is not really a topic in decision making. It's a topic among others, or it basically has no impact. It's tier 2, or priority 2 or priority 3. Especially when you look into the industries above, you'll see these are the industries that either are all around energy, such as utilities, electric power, or that are very energy intensive, so chemical, pulp and paper, or cement. So next question was, how can we link this with our maturity curve? Where are these markets? Where are the potentials? And we did a little bit more research and had a couple of interviews and came to this. You see on the top the maturity curve from non-investigating to enterprise-wide energy management. And for example, in automotive, when you look into automotive, you don't only have the car makers such as the European brands, BMW, Daimler, Fiat, etc. The European brands especially are driving this, so they strive to get this enterprise-wide energy management, and they also force their tier 1 suppliers to do that. On the other side, we have end users in US or in Asia or tier 3 suppliers that don't really care about energy management. That's simply a fact. So in automotive, you have a very wide spread across the maturity curve. For example, in semiconductors, it's only very small number of companies care about that, which are taking care of the energy-intensive processes in the industry. On the other hand, you have things such as pulp and paper on the very bottom, where the system integrators that are out there, or the suppliers, really have a full-blown energy management system that can be integrated in the greenfield right away. It is basically on a very high level on the maturity curve. Chemical and petrochemical, just a quick word. Here we see strong regional differences. in North America, where energy prices are currently not really a topic. We don't see energy management really applied to a great extent. In fact, we had a forum early this year in February in Orlando, and it was hard to get panelists, while in our forum, the chemical suppliers or chemical end users told us they are doing this for many, many years. They have advanced systems to do this, and they apply it, and this is a very important thing for their decision making. So another interesting thing for us was always to ask, is energy management something that already wears out? Which means if you save around 10% energy per year this year, what will you do next year? What's the comparison between your targets yesterday and tomorrow? How mature is it already? And what you see here, you have past savings and future savings on the vertical axis. On the horizontal axis, we have end users clustered according to one of the questions, such as it was asked, how do you implement energy management? It goes from plan to implement to harmonize across sites. And for me, what was very, very encouraging was the targets stay the same or at least increase. So even if the companies do have a harmonized program across sites, the energy saving targets basically increase. So people that do implement energy management actually find out more and more stuff they can do. More and more savings are discovered. Obviously, there are some applications in some industries, such as the European steel industry, which have implemented energy management and started to implement it around 20, 30 years ago, and that now have only very small savings because their processes are already highly optimized. But on a global level, across the industries, you'd really say the targets stay the same or even increase, which means most of the companies, or the bulk of the companies, will achieve exponential savings in energy. This leads us to another question. Well, how will the investment of energy management develop over the next year? So if companies that once started invest more and more and go on because they see the benefits. So we asked them, this was a question to suppliers, what are your growth expectations over the next years? And well, the really small part, think of growth between 0 and 6%. But the bulk of the market, I think that's really somewhere between 6 or 10 or even more than 10% annually. This is not an outdated survey. And if you look at the global automation market and how it is today, where in the majority of the market, where we see growth rates between 3 and maximum 6, 7%. So this is a market that's really attractive. It's outperforming the overall market. However, it's important to see that not all industries, not all regions are growing at the same pace. While EMEA is already a big market for energy management, we still consider it to be one of the key growth markets for energy management. And also we see more and more initiatives in Asia, but this is really coming from low base. So this is on the regional side. On the industry side, we see the energy-intensive industries investing more and more. We see food and beverage industry looking more into energy management. They again come from a very small base. They don't have that many systems in place. And the automotive industry, and this is the European automotive industry, is investing more and more in energy management, and they also push their tier 1 suppliers to do that. All those electronic manufacturers are looking more and more into energy management. So, Thomas, please.
Yeah, so thank you, Florian. With the next slide, with this slide, we are coming back to the users already implemented energy management or are very close to, and we asked the question regarding audits and monitoring the energy flow on site. So one important question is really, what is the audit frequency? on site, and we got some surprising answers. The first one was we got the feedback that a quarter of the responses said they do not deploy any energy audits. Later on we will discuss this, but I can tell you here this is not good enough, because energy management is not a one-off activity, it's a constant process, and without energy or without frequent energy audits you will lose a lot of momentum. Secondly, roughly 20% of the responses outlined they don't know if energy audits are deployed. That may happen, but the last over 40%, luckily, of the responses doing audits in the area between 2 and 5 years, and that is good news. Even more, 15% of the respondents said they're doing this every year. And I think this last group is really on the right way, because again, it should be a constant process. An audit and monitoring is absolutely required. And we were a little bit surprised about the first bar here, that one quarter said they do not perform any audits. Anyhow, Florian, next slide, please. We're still discussing here the audit and monitoring bit. And the important start is always to measure the current energy flow on site. We said this earlier on, and I come back to the phrases Florian used already. What you can't measure, you can't control, and that is really important. And later, this is important to verify how effective the energy saving strategies are. And the question we really ask here was how to do the energy monitoring on site. With other words, what is the measurement principle users used to monitor the energy flow? And half of the responses does it inside the PLC, the DCS, or the HMI. With other words, the majority really does it with the integrated control system, PLC, DCS, or HMI. Less than 20% does it manual or inside the MES or ERP layer. That is more or less an indirect method. And only 15% don't know how to do energy monitoring. And we feel it is not abnormal that more than 50% really using the existing automation equipment to measure the energy flow, and that seems to be common practice. And that should be enough comments regarding audits and monitoring, and I flip back to Florian on setting the targets. Florian, please.
So I already mentioned that one of the key challenges is setting the right target for energy management. This means how to justify investment when you don't know how big the savings will be. And if you don't know how big the savings will be, you don't know how much money you can save. So this is one of the key challenges that users face. And what we did here, the first thing was we actually look at data that is available from a US government agency, looked at the cost structure of industries. So what you see here is on the vertical axis you have the different industries. It's more granular than we did on the survey. And on the horizontal axis you have the wages. Wages means water, air, gas, although gas stands for gas, oil, coal, gasoline, biomass, so all primary energy sources, electricity, and steam. So these are all the energy sources that we consider and take into account here. When you look at the percentages here, they show you percent of energy cost as share of variable cost without labor. Without labor is important to really have a common base, because alone between Europe and US there's 20% difference in wages. Wages, I mean labor costs as well. Okay, going back to energy. Overall, you have here the discrete industries, such as aerospace, automotive. They have very, very low share of energy costs, so they are not really forced to invest per se. Then you see the process industries and heavy process industries that have a very, very high share of energy costs, such as water and wastewater, which uses a lot of pumps to get water from A to B. We often have the feeling that this really, well, understates the importance of energy management or energy savings. A good example is the automotive industry. The automotive industry is very, very competitive. They try to optimize every little part of their production. Their EBIT ratio is not that high, and even though energy is only 1% of the cost, it's already 16% of the EBIT. And energy is very, very volatile. So change in energy can really threaten the EBIT, and it gets even more when you look into things such as textile, which is also very competitive, cement and glass. So to justify energy management initiatives, it's also good to reference the EBIT and the bottom line, or the financial bottom line. It's also very intuitively, because energy savings typically tend to last. So it's not, if you optimize the process and you have those savings in one quarter, you'll also have it the next quarter as well. So setting the targets. This comes out of the survey. So the past savings and the future targets, that comes out of the survey. In case we see that the companies and answers were not representative because it was only just one or two companies, and maybe the answers were differ very strongly from each other, we just say here not applicable. But here are our recommendations. So going, for example, to semantic glass, we recommend that between 8 to 10% of annual savings are, well, this should be really a good target for you. And when you combine that with the table early on, it's very easy to calculate or to justify energy management investments. For example, if you had around 1 million variable costs without labor, then you would, according to this table, on average, end up with around half a million in terms of energy costs, and you should really try to reduce your energy costs by around 50,000 per year. If you look back to the EBIT structure, this would basically mean an EBIT increase by 15%. And this is basically the point in time where the top management should start to listen. Well, we have two slides about costs on targets for cost reduction, but pure energy costs are not the only target for energy management, and it's a more holistic approach. And Thomas will explain this a little bit more about other targets and a holistic approach.
Yes, that's true. It is not all related to cost, but cost is still crucial and important. So our question here was, what are the main motivators to do energy management? Because if a company decides to do active energy management, there must be a strategy behind how to implement and what they're going to achieve. And that was exactly the question here. As you can see, the core answer was really to reduce costs with 32%. That is not a surprise. But if we really cluster this a little bit more, if we summarize the first three answers, then we can really see what's directly related to energy consumption, and that is cost reduction, process optimization, and plan future consumption. So these three motivates are really important for many companies, and this was the highest answer, or the highest hit rate on answers we got. About 20% were related to external factors. Like I said before, cost reduction is not the only one. So some companies really has to comply with power factors. They're trying to avoid heavy penalties and price fluctuations on energy suppliers. And of course a schedule, let's say a rolling forecast with energy suppliers was the answer here to these external factors. Only 10% were really focused on reducing greenhouse gases and produce sustainable products. So I think it's not a big change, but we should keep in mind the external factors really to comply with legal regulations and doing rolling forecast scenarios of energy consumption to energy suppliers are still important points. Okay, Florian, I think that's now enough for setting the targets. We should now discuss a little bit the strategies, and because of that, next slide. Thank you. So in the area of hyper-competition, suppliers have to fulfill the customer demands. And the question here was if user expectation and supplier motivation are really in line or not. That means we asked independently suppliers and users, and for the first two segments, that is energy measurement and use of energy efficient motors, we were absolutely in line. So the supplier ranking and the user ranking in these answers were absolutely in line. That means supplier needs and user motivation have a big fit. On the next slide you see a deviation, and the deviation was because the suppliers are much more focused on selling AC drives and visualized the energy flow in HMI software. That was the supplier motivation, but the user ranking in this priority list was different, because the user ranking on number 3 was planning with MES software. So that goes back maybe to the auditing thing, because if the users already harvest the first energy savings, they want to do future planning after an audit. And the fourth priority was switch off selected consumer. That means if in this audit were investigated as a consumer with high energy consumption, the user simply harvests the low-hanging fruits and switch these areas off. 5 and 6, going back to normal, there is still a common sense between the suppliers and the users. So that means in overall, the suppliers think a little bit in implementation of activities, and the operators, the suppliers think in selling components and visualization stuff to reduce energy consumption on site, and the users think more in strategies and harvesting low-hanging fruits. So that means sometimes, that is the message here for the suppliers, sometimes you have really talk closely to your user. If he starts an energy management activity, what are the next steps? It is not always the case after the user has harvested the low-hanging energy consumption fruits that he will implement more hardware. Sometimes he will reshape his future strategy and so on. Okay, that brings us to the next strategy step, and therefore, Florian, next slide, please. Without any doubt, energy management strategy is necessary to deploy energy management. So this comes back to the audits, and this comes back what we have seen before, that the users are strongly believe a visualization in HMI is helpful to measure energy flows. To define this strategy, it is required to develop a picture of the current energy consumption level. So this underpins really the statement we have seen before. This is the brainstorm stage in this process, because if you analyze your plant, you have to outline the areas with high energy consumption and define the corrective action. And that's more or less what's happened here in this strategy discussion, and that was the feedback we got. And after the implementation, after that, the implementation on the shop floor begins. So strategy first, and strategy is based on the measurement of the current energy flow. The strategy follows how to implement corrective action, and then the corrective action starts. Later on, you measure the effectiveness of the corrective action and implementation. This goes back to the audits. So if you have done and deployed some corrective action, you have to measure the effectiveness. And that was exactly reflected in the audit bit. So to come to the conclusion, energy management is really a continuously ongoing process. It will affect the company structure and the way the company worked. Because of that, it has to support it by really the employees and by the top management, and that is maybe the biggest challenge, to get the behavior of the employees a little bit changed, that they behave according to the energy management rules, because they have to deploy, they have to live it. And without the help of the employees and the backup of the top-level management, it will be a mission impossible. And again, to change human behavior, that is maybe the most critical part in implementing a new strategy. So with that, we can really leave now the strategy bit and coming back to some comments on the suppliers, and because of that, I flip back to Florian.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, at ARC we often do things such as supplier selections. We are often asked about who is doing what, and this is one part of the business. And what I want to present you now is, one part is, the first slide will be something from our study, where we evaluated suppliers, and the second slide will show you how the users think about the supplier community. So what you see here is basically the structure on the left side from our study. So we look at metering, motors, drives, and soft starters. We go through the controller and go all around the circles until the question, are suppliers able to be a main contractor? Overall, we identified 4 different types of suppliers. We have those all-rounders, basically serving every bit of the market with products and solutions, such as Siemens, ABB, Schneider Electric, or Rockwell. And these suppliers make up around 50% of the market. Then we do have the motor and drive specialists, which do focus on actuation, and they make around 35% of the market. We have to say that more and more motor and drive specialists do focus also on other areas. They have controls in their offering. They do more and more services. And if it's a drive-centric solution, they also act as a solution provider. Then we have the measurement specialists, which is really a smaller part of the market. Only around 10% of the companies fit here. We do have to say that these include, let's say, the traditional suppliers such as Entrus and Halsa and Cornell, but there are some new players as well. These new players typically offer 1 or 2 different sensors, primarily focused on electricity, so power meters, often wireless. The solution, their energy management solutions, basically take the data, put it in the cloud on their own analytics, and feed it back to the end user. This is a very, very nice solution if you only want to do measurement and visualization. We got the feedback from users that these suppliers, even though they're very cost effective, make a lot of problems basically when you do the next step and want to integrate this into the control architecture. Then we have the software companies. On the total energy market, they are rather small share of the market, mainly because the energy management function is just one function among many in MES and ERP systems. Here you also have let's say the overall players or the general such as SAP, or you also have players that are very specialized in energy management such as Info or AspenTech. So what do the users, how do the users rank suppliers? All right, so Siemens was ranked the highest by some distance, followed by ABB and GE. So these three companies could be really considered to be all-rounders. They are evaluated really as the most capable of serving the energy needs. This comes directly out of the survey. And again, the sample was quite representative in terms of industries as well as regions. What we were surprised with that quite a high number of respondents prefer in-house solutions. We drilled a little bit deeper there and looked at who were these companies, and that really showed us these companies that prefer in-house solutions started energy management very, very early, which means they started in the late 90s and maybe early 90s. So at this point in time, there was not really a common or standard product by suppliers. So they started in-house solutions basically out of the need to do so. We think that in future the off-the-shelf solutions will increase and get more and more important in the market. We also want to point out that there are some companies here that have really high focus on dedicated industries, such as Info, which is focused on infrastructure, Honeywell for oil and gas, or ABB for example, pulp and paper or cement and glass. So this also impacts the results to see how companies are focused on industries and how they're focused on the market. So that was the findings. That was definitely not all of the findings. We sent around PDF documents a few weeks or months ago to give you the access to all of the findings. We had around 30 questions, so that would be alone like the 80 slides or 90 slides, far too much for one session here. I nevertheless want to give you the chance to access some more information also. We have further research, and this is partly fired by the survey results and leverages them. We already published 2 strategy reports, one for users, one for suppliers. We have the big market study, which basically shows you how big the market is, where it's growing. We currently work on a solution guide. We have on the website we have a series of blogs looking at energy management. Just yesterday we published one that was about the first by Peter Stahlberger. The trigger was an interview given for the Zeit German newspaper. Also, I would really invite you, we'll be very happy to welcome you at our European Forum. It's from March 4th to March 5th in Amsterdam. A very nice hotel, good location. We had a workshop on energy management last year. We had some in the past, so we will continue that track. And there are also some more speaking slots and panelists available if you want to participate actively and not only as a visitor. But we have also other topics. It's not only about energy management. We look into cybersecurity, and if you want to pass on a lot of energy data, you have to take care of that. Very closely also related is big data in Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0, one core of it is resource efficient production, so it's very close to energy management.